Welcome to Electric Libertyland, here on the Lions of Liberty podcast, your weekly shot of culture, comedy, and liberty with your host, Brian McWilliams.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Electric Libertyland, episode number 24. As the lady said, I am Brian McWilliams, your lovely host. And I'm here. I'm joined today with one of your favorite guests, maybe ever. I don't know. He's certainly got a fan base out there. The one and only legal counsel, Rico. Hello, Rico.
How did my agent book me on this show again?
What can I say?
No breaks for me.
I've got rumors of him colluding with Russia, and that's all you need in this day and age. So, speaking of Russia, that is what we're going to start the show with. But before we do start the show, I want to remind everybody that you can find us on Twitter at Lions of Liberty. You can join our Facebook forum if you want to have Comey discussions. You can do that over at Lions of Liberty. Just type it into Facebook. It'll let you in if you don't look too crazy. And also, guys, you can join our Lions of Liberty Pride, which has all sorts of special content. You can find that by going to lionsofliberty.com/support. And again, the kind of content I put out there, Rico and I actually just recorded our They Live special with Mark, where we basically Mystery Science theatered over the movie. So you play it in real time, kind of like you do with Pink Floyd and The Wizard of Oz. So we'll see how that turned out. We got very, very drunk. I don't know about you, Rico, but I was.
Yeah, I was a little gone.
Yeah, I think we all were a little gone by the end of that. So anyway, check that out. So anyway, I do want to start this show off though by talking about obviously the top news of the day, which is Jeff Sessions and his hearing today. So, Rico, I know I didn't have a chance to really watch the whole thing, but I did read some recaps. Again, these are the middle of the day, so we can't go to bars and watch them like the goddamn hipsters do with James Comey hearing. But did you have a chance to check out any of it?
I didn't see any of it, except for the clips they were showing just now on the news. And my favorite clip was, I think, Tom Cotton asking Jeff Sessions if he was a fan of some spy novels.
Well, it's funny. Like, it was ridiculous, but at the same time, I can at least appreciate where he was getting at, trying to be like, this is insane. Because he said the guy they're saying, Sessions met with the Russian secretary to collude to take the election for Trump in the middle of a party or something like that.
Right.
So
well, he pretty forcefully denied that he had any secret meetings with the Russian ambassador, which was the kind of the rumor for all these last few months, and he seemed pretty pissed off that it had been suggested. So you'd think that's a pretty strong takeaway from the hearing that, well, he didn't meet with the Russian ambassador privately. Of course, the left seems to be kind of attaching to the fact that he said, I do not recall to many, many questions, apparently.
Which is funny because Jeff Sessions clearly has a terrible memory, despite the fact that we know he doesn't smoke pot. So we know that's not getting in the way of him remembering anything.
Yeah. But considering what happened last time with, I think it was Al Franken asked like a 15-minute soliloquy question, and he gave some answer that was correct to a part of the question and maybe incorrect to like one of the first 10 minutes of the question.
One of the subtitles or the footnotes to the question.
So it seems to do little good to even testify. I guess you have to kind of do the dog and pony show and trot out there. But I mean, I thought the big takeaway is, well, he didn't meet with the Russian ambassador privately, and the other big kind of item that I took away from was he pretty forcefully denied Comey's assertion that he just ignored Comey's apparent plea to not leave him alone with Trump again or something.
Right, and what he also had said, Comey had said that he thought that Sessions should step away from something, or step down, or step away from the investigation, and because of things that were going on behind the scenes that Comey knew about, and Jeff Sessions basically was like, I don't know what the hell he's talking about.
Yeah. But who do you root for in this situation?
Well, that's the problem, man. And when I was watching, what I caught parts of it, and I was looking on Twitter to see reactions, and of course, all these liberals or all these progressives are just can't get enough pleasuring themselves to Senator Kamala Harris, who's one of our California senators, and I was watching the clip of her because they're like, oh, she owned Jeff Sessions and she got shushed, and how dare they shush a black woman? They didn't shush anybody else. But you watch the clip, and she asks him a question, and he starts to respond, and about 5 to 6 seconds in, she interrupts him again with another question. He goes, okay, well, let me, he goes, well, that is yes or no, yes or no. And I was like, this most obnoxious, aggressive questioning where the guy couldn't get a word in, and there's no circumstance where that would be considered okay. But, these people are now being like, well, how dare you even suggest that she shouldn't be able to question like that? It's like, let the guy talk. That's what he has to say.
It's all for show. She gets to have her face on the news in front of her constituents who are probably 98% progressives and attacking Jeff Sessions. And I find this trend of whatever side you're on saying they own the other side from some stupid clip. Every side does, and it's beyond obnoxious because it's never owning anything. It's just someone acting like a jackass,
right?
And sharing your point of view, and that equals owning.
Well, it also reminded me of a very progressive, and this is what you said. Who do you root for? And it's so funny because God, we all hate Jeff Sessions with a passion, but I find myself in that circumstance, that exchange with Kamala Harris, rooting for Jeff Sessions because she was so obnoxious, and I'll never forgive her for making me have to take his side even once in my life. But yeah, man, it's a kind of that progressive thing though that she did where she asks a question and then doesn't let you finish and then keeps interrupting you and then you get frustrated, and then by you getting frustrated, it's a victory. And then they go, oh, see, she got to him. He's rattled. And it's like, well,
I mean, what did the left or the Democrats really expect to get out of this is, I wonder, because clearly he's not going to say, yes, I met with
right.
Sergey, whatever his face is, and say, yeah, I told him how to rig the voter, the ballots, and God,
I gave him all the codes.
They did a great job. Trump really only got 100,000 votes in the election. But
we were trying to do this with all sorts of nations for years, China, but no, Russia really stepped up to the plate. They got it done.
So,
yeah. Well, that is the same thing with the Comey hearings. Well, anything after, I remember Donald Trump responding to Comey and all this stuff, and the liberals were like, we need to get Donald Trump out there. He needs to testify. He needs to get under oath. And I'm like, do you really think any president under oath is still, you think they're telling the total truth? Ever?
If there's ever any president stupid enough to agree to testify under oath and answer every question, it might be Donald Trump.
True. But he probably would answer honestly too. He's the only one that would be dumb enough to answer honestly. If there's I would say I don't think Donald Trump is a liar. I think he believes what he says. It's just wrong half of the time.
Well, he also then must change what he believes very frequently because
he might. I don't know. He's a businessman.
One of our next topics, I guess, will be the Saudi Arabia deal.
Yeah.
And I believe during the election he was stating quite vehemently that Saudi Arabia may have had some involvement in 9/11. Look at where all the attackers are from. He was no fan of Saudi Arabia. And what does he do in the last few weeks? He agrees to sell a bunch of arms to Saudi Arabia.
$110 billion worth of arms to a nation that was just confirmed that people can sue Saudi Arabia as a country for the 9/11 hijackers and the terrorists involved. And Rand Paul had wanted to stand up, and he was one of the people leading it. Al Franken voted against it, but they wanted to have a resolution to stop the sale of all those arms to Saudi Arabia, which failed 47 to 53 in the Senate. So that's going to go through. But excuse me, but the point does remain that, why are we giving them all of these arms? Well, we know that they're, they have supported extremist groups in the past. Well, we know that they have one of the worst civil rights and one of the worst humanitarian rights records of anybody. I mean, women have no rights. You've got people getting beheaded and crucified over there for protesting. And yet we're like, oh, what do you need? $110 billion to go and kill a bunch of Yemeni civilians? Sure.
Yeah, it's pretty mind-boggling, especially because he just had, what was portrayed as a very cordial and maybe successful meeting with Netanyahu. I think that was a few weeks ago. So it's kind of odd that he would, whatever they talked about, I'm sure it wasn't, hey, go give Saudi Arabia a bunch of high-grade weapons that we're going to have to develop better weapons against.
Right, which is what Rand Paul was saying that too. he was saying that Israel, he's like, well, anytime we give Saudi Arabia weapons, now Israel's going to have to ramp up their weapons, which meanwhile, we give them a lot of weapons anyway. And does that sound like a dream come true for the military-industrial complex?
Absolutely. That's got to be one of the driving forces behind it. And you wonder how much of an influence they have in the Trump administration so far, because he seemed to be much less bellicose during his campaign than he is once he got into office. He seems to be much more hungry for war in a few different spheres. So a little bit concerning, I think, the Saudi Arabia deal is. But that resolution wasn't going to affect anything anyways.
No,
it would have had to go through the House, and then Trump would have had to not veto his own deal that he made. So it was for show. But I did see, I think you referenced Al Franken had a similar resolution last year, and that one failed 27-71. Mm-hmm. And so this one was much closer and hopefully shows a shift in both our attitudes as a nation and, more importantly, in the Senate, what they're going to, hold the president to.
Yeah, hopefully, man. Well, here, real quick, I want to get back to Comey before we move on to another topic, just because I want to get your take on something very specific in those hearings. I mean, they've been talked about forever, but one of the things that I couldn't get over, and I did a drunken hot take after we recorded our They Live thing. So our Pride members got to hear my entire take on this, except for something I'm just going to bring up now. But as a lawyer, Rico, I want to ask you a question, because one of the things I was blown away by in the Comey hearings is that he meets with Donald Trump. Then after meeting with Trump, he's like, well, and I had to take notes down because I know Trump, he's a liar. So I wanted to write down, notes so I could prove that, what he was saying would be wrong. And I'm like, how the hell does that prove anything? That's just hearsay. That's just you saying that you heard something and you remember it in one way. And then he deleted the memos, by the way.
Yeah, well, before you get to the deleted memo part, I kind of had the same thought as you. But believe it or not, the memos actually have more than zero weight, because they are kind of a contemporaneous an account of what happened. And so it is persuasive evidence to the court in some situations, absent a contrary memo. So if Comey is writing a memo immediately after the event, and I'm sure Trump was not writing a memo after the event, then there's only one memo. And it's not Comey writing a memo, 2 months later. It's right after the event. And, shrewdly, he's thinking, okay, well, if this ever comes, shit hits the fan, and I want my story to have more weight than Trump's. And it would anyways, because Trump's not really thought
not
to
very
be.
much like.
Yeah, but the fact that he recorded this memo contemporaneously almost does have some legal weight.
But then if you delete, then he deleted the memos and no one's seen them. This is like the Lutheran that they covered on South Park, where he saw the golden tablets, and he wrote down the shit, but nobody can confirm what he wrote down because no one else gets to see it.
Well, that becomes a problem, because you do have to produce the memos. So I'm wondering, okay, well, how did he leaked his own memo?
Well,
how did he leak his own deleted memo?
Well, that's the thing. He said, and this I was reading into this, is that the guy, he had a friend leak the memo to a reporter at the New York Times, but even that was like, the guy didn't actually send the memo to anybody. He read it to him or recited it to him. So again, who's seen these
this
memos?
Seems like third degree, fourth degree hearsay.
Right.
Like, I told myself, I remember this conversation I wrote down, and now I'm telling someone else, and they're going to tell someone else. It's like, all right, this is beginning to be a joke.
Yeah.
The thing that I was really kind of irked by with Comey, with this whole situation, is, okay, I can see writing a memo, but he's been in kind of the law and enforcement field, or whatever you want to call it, for decades.
Well, not even law enforcement, though. Well, he was in the Clintons' pocket for decades.
Yeah, well, that's also another issue, and true. But he apparently never wrote memos before. So I can see if this is a customary practice for him to do. Okay, but to do it in only one situation, it just reeks of, a personal agenda, which I think this whole thing was clearly, because he seemed to be annoyed, and he ranted against the besmirching of the pristine reputation of both himself and the FBI by Trump. Like, fuck the FBI. Why are they so? They're not some bastion of virtue.
And then God gave us the FBI, and they came down on high with wings of gold.
Seriously, like they've never done any shady shit. Please, I don't know
maybe
anyone.
Martin Luther King might come to mind.
Yeah, I mean,
him trying to frame him for cheating on his wife.
It's unbelievable that he would think that maybe most people do think of the FBI as some noble. And I'm not going to say, like, everyone in the FBI is, I'm sure there's many good people.
I really like the X-Files, and that was part of the FBI, so.
Yeah. But to say, I'm sure the rank and file FBI are all mostly good guys, but the leadership, I mean, come on, I'm very suspicious that they're all these 100% noble, virtuous creatures, so.
Right, and I love, too, by the way, that he's said he was scared of Trump in the meeting, and he by the way, Comey's 6'8".
Yeah,
and also, but I also like that he had the opportunity to go and tell somebody what the president had done immediately, and said, "Oh, I feel like he was pressuring me to do this or that. I felt like he was obstructing justice." And he didn't tell anybody, didn't say anything. He just made his little notes. And they asked him why he didn't say anything. He's like, "Well, maybe I'm just weak." It's like, well, maybe you should be fired from the fucking director of the FBI position then.
Yeah. Way to fire the weak director of the FBI. Good job.
Right? God, the guy sounds like he's incompetent. He's leaking memos to the press. He's too weak to stand up for what's right and tell you you're obstructing justice. Why should you not be fired?
I actually had a really annoying conversation with my dad about this the day it happened, because I was bringing up this point too. I'm like, if he was so concerned about Trump kind of obstructing justice, why didn't he tell anyone? And my dad's like, well, there was no one to tell. Like, he's a lifelong Republican, but he just hates Trump. So he's like on the leftist train of thought here. He's like, well, he couldn't tell Sessions because he was recused, and the deputy director wasn't confirmed yet, blah, blah, blah. So he did tell others. He told senior officials in the FBI. And I'm like, are you fucking kidding me here? You're going to say more senior officials, quote unquote. Right. Like, it just reeks of, what? He couldn't figure out who to tell. He's the director of the FBI. He can't. So I'm going to have to tell this to my lackeys or something. And they're never going to be named or confirmed either. So the whole thing was a joke.
Yeah, that was insane. And of course, everybody still wants to ignore. The mainstream media still seems to be ignoring this whole. The biggest thing for me to come out of that whole thing was the fact that he basically confirmed that Loretta Lynch met with Bill Clinton on the plane. And as a direct result of that meeting, asked him to completely reconfigure the way he talked about Hillary Clinton and basically deny that she was under investigation, say that it was a quote-unquote matter, and that it was some other ridiculous term. It was a happening, like that terrible M. Night Shyamalan movie. And, it's like, so nobody wants to talk about how ridiculous that is, how unbelievable that is, that would be something that Loretta Lynch would do, and that this occurred with the presidential candidate, and she was under investigation, and he misrepresented that to the public.
Why didn't he have a memo of his conversation with Loretta Lynch?
That would have been nice.
Yeah, and the most clear thing is, if you want someone in the FBI that will let you obstruct justice, James Comey's the man, apparently.
Oh,
because
clearly.
He lets the Obama administration obstruct justice. He lets the Trump administration obstruct justice. So
he let Bill Clinton and that, God, who was the guy's name that was involved in the whole scandal where he was stealing oil to countries under Bill Clinton's watch? And Comey headed up, he was his lawyer, headed up the investigation or something, let that go way back when. Then he came in at HSBC after they were involved with, again, making all these crazy payments to foreign entities and was again involved with the Clintons. Like, he's just been involved in scandal after scandal where he's looked the other way and let things just go along with the power players. But God forbid, not that I'm saying he should look the other way with Trump, but now he's Johnny Do Right.
Yeah. It's either time to shit or get off the pot with this whole Russia investigation.
God
Produce
damn right.
something or not. Or there's nothing there, because he said they've started the investigation last July.
Yeah.
So we're getting on a year and there isn't anything. So, seriously, how long are these stories going to play out? It's all just for show, and it's just
Right, nothing's accomplished in any of these hearings. Nothing's revealed, and everything that would be revealed, they go, well, it's got to be private. Like, I was just watching, got home, and Rico's actually next to me. He's in studio today, but...
so I had no choice but to do the show.
Yeah, pretty much.
Forced.
Pretty much. I was like, you want to ride to the airport? Sit down. Sit down and give me your take on Comey. But I was watching Tucker Carlson. I got home and I flipped it on, and because I like Tucker, I think he does a good job with interviews. But he had this crazy progressive on that was just harping on that. Do you read the newspapers? 17 agencies is like that was not what they said a year ago. Like that was back when Hillary Clinton was still possibly could win this thing, and still nothing, still no evidence. It's just get over it. Enough of this already.
Well, it's never going to be dropped, but I think people's interests are going to eventually wane. Because
Trump's got to do something really awful. Get us moved on as a country.
Okay, well, all right. It's going to send Dennis Rodman over with some nukes to North Korea and solve the problem.
How great would it be if Dennis Rodman assassinated Kim Jong-un? I'm just thinking of why he's going over there. How funny would it be? Have you seen... my dog's barking. I'm going to kill that dog. No, have you seen... Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome?
Of course I have.
It's a fantastic film. Yeah. So all I can't help thinking about is how great it would be if Kim Jong-un rode Dennis Rodman around like the little retarded guy, or the little midget rode the retarded guy around, yelling, "Who run Bada Town?" That'd be awesome.
I had not had that thought, but I suppose it would be amusing.
Oh, it'd be great. He could fight all of his generals. Instead of shooting anti-aircraft guns at him, he could jump around the Thunderdome riding Dennis Rodman and hack him up with chainsaws. That'd be awesome, man.
Well, I think we're going down a weird path here.
I'm just saying, North Korean reality TV. I would never stop watching it. All right, next thing. I want to talk about this a little bit because it was just Gay Pride Week, which means there were gay pride parades all over the nation. Yeah, there's a huge one here in LA, of course. But what ended up happening, predictably, I would say, is that instead of being a celebration of all-inclusiveness, instead of being a celebration of people of different views coming together, and basically like, hey, great, we're having this parade. Gay marriage is widely accepted now. Gay rights are better off now than they've ever been, ever in this country. Instead of celebrating and welcoming people in, what ended up happening was that, like, for example, in Charlotte, at Charlotte Pride, gay Trump supporters showed up. And again, these are openly gay supporters of Donald Trump. They showed up and they wanted to march in the parade, and they were not permitted to march in the parade. They were told to get the hell out of there because, they were apparently peddling hate. And in LA, they had, of course, the hashtag resistance people. So instead of being a gay pride parade, it became a resistance parade. And this is what a quote from LA Weekly said. "The Resist March was built around the concept of standing in solidarity for all human rights," explains Brian Pendleton, a CSW board member. I don't know what that means. "The march is meant to be a celebration of humanity that is all part and parcel of the LGBTQ community. We are immigrants, we are women, we are seniors, we are communities of color, and on and on. Very few communities encompass so many different types of Americans." So again, it's supposed to be a celebration of humanity, all people, solidarity, yet...
Unless
you like Donald Trump, and then get the fuck out of here.
Yeah. It's kind of ironic because there is actually a couple 20 years ago or so, there was a Supreme Court case where I believe it was a gay pride group sued one of maybe the New York, some kind of St. Patrick's Day parade because they were not...
Probably Boston. I think it was probably Boston St. Patrick's Day.
So they were suing to be included in that parade, and now they're excluding. So it seems the shoe has dropped and they've gained a little bit of power. So
I do love how that works. As soon as the people get the power, then they start picking and choosing who's invited this exclusive event.
So it would be interesting to see like what their main gripes with Trump are, because he is, not perfect, I guess, in the LGBTQ plus world. I think their principal thing on that is he has kind of cut federal funding to fight, certain enforcements of, discrimination.
Right. And I know he's a supporter of the religious freedom laws that are put into place where people aren't going to be forced to won't be forced to bake the gay cake,
Right. But I mean,
also, he's rolled back some of the protections for transgender students that were
Right.
that or Obama's letter saying you let them use, which I'm honestly for, and that's a whole other conversation we can have. But
yeah, I mean, but in other ways, he's been pretty friendly to the gay community and supportive of gay marriage well before, Hillary Clinton or Obama was.
he's the only president to ever take office that supports gay marriage.
So it's interesting they're so resistant to him. It seems like some of his policies are just, we're not going to spend federal money on this. Not that, like, we want discrimination, but it seems like you're not as, 20, 30 years ago, the gay population was, I would argue, much more systematically discriminated against than they are now. There's a much more widespread, I don't know if you want to call it social tolerance for the gay community, but I don't think people really think like, oh my God, it's a gay person or a gay wedding or, oh my God, they're married. People are very accepting of the gay community now. So, I think the level of discrimination is much less and, certainly not perfect. I would guess they think it's far from perfect, but we've come a long way as a society. And do we need the federal funding for all these certain programs? So,
right.
I don't know. They seem to be picking new battles that they don't need to be picking.
Well, I agree with you. And what it comes down around to me is like a lot of people become this, they get pressured by friends. And again, I blame social media for a lot of this because a lot of this anti-Trump rhetoric from people who are LGBTQ, obviously the T part I can understand since they want the bathrooms, but it's pressure from their friends. Everybody wants to go, and most gay people are friends with progressives, and that they may have some people that are conservative they're friends with, but a lot of them are friends with progressives, and probably all progressives. So when they see everybody jumping on the anti-Trump bandwagon, what are they going to do? They're going to jump in with their friends and make it a big thing, and then once it gets steamrolled or once it gets snowballing, there's no stopping.
Isn't this kind of counterproductive as well? Because you'd think, okay, well, they have a common bond in that, the fellow members of the gay community, they can, meet on some issues and then have a real kind of discussion and try to change, Trump supporters' minds. Like, why do they have to think, oh my God, you're a Trump supporter, you're a piece of shit?
Right.
No. I mean, like, okay, we disagree on some issues, but you know what? This is where I think you're wrong at. And for these reasons, and just kicking Trump gay supporters out of the parade,
right? And
that's not going to accomplish the goal.
No, it's going to accomplish nothing. And also, you look at it this way too. Okay, if there's one day, look, hate each other the rest of the year, but if there's one day, you should be able to come together and just say, all right, we're just going to be proud and we're going to be, gay and we're going to march and we're going to enjoy ourselves. Shouldn't that be the day?
I would think, but I've never been invited, so I don't know. They're excluding me too.
Me neither, my friend. Me neither. All right. Next thing I want to talk about is this ties into kind of more of this madness that's going on. But I want to talk about Evergreen College. Are you familiar with this story at all?
Not really.
No? All right. Well, I'll break it down. I think a lot of our listeners probably are familiar with it, but let me tell you what happened. You can give me your take. So basically what's been going on is there was a professor named Brett Weinstein there. And I apologize if I'm mispronouncing his name. It might be Weinstein. I think it's Weinstein. But Brett Weinstein was a professor of, I believe it was biology or sociology. And he had, gotten this email, and they have a day of, it's supposed to be like a day of abstinence. And every year they'd have it. And it was essentially to show how necessary people of color were to the campus, to the everyday function.
Abstinence?
Or not, absence.
Okay.
Whoops, Freudian slip there. Sorry, a day of absence, not abstinence.
No one's getting laid.
Okay, no, day of absence. So what happened is people of color would be, they'd say, okay, we're encouraging you to not come to campus so that everybody can see just how necessary you are to campus life, how much you'll be missed, etc. Voluntary thing. Everybody else just come to campus as usual. So this year, this organizer, the organizing group of it, which clearly is, people of color, and I believe it was a black woman, black student. But he, this email goes out from this group, and he responds, and basically the email had said, we want for the day of absence this year for all people that are not of color to stay off of campus. All teachers, all students. So you guys are not allowed on campus, essentially. So he wrote back and he said, yeah, that's crazy. I mean, look, I'm supportive of your mission. I don't want to come across as being flippant. I'm supportive of it, but there's a difference between asking somebody to voluntarily leave campus to show how they'd be missed and telling people that they're not welcome on campus for this day. And I don't agree with it, but I'm happy to talk to you more about it and whatever. So people show up. He shows up. Some other students that are white show up, and nothing happens for about a month. Then a month after this initial thing happened, about 30 to 50 angry students show up in a mob and start yelling and screaming at him and shouting in his face, and he's trying to talk to him. But as we've seen with a lot of progressives, there's no speaking to people at times. It's just simply you're being yelled at, and they don't want to hear what you have to say, and they're just going to shout you down, and that's what happened. And it became to the point where it's like people are violent. There's threats against him. There's students marching and yelling outside the dean's office and calling for him to be fired. And again, all over this minor incident, which he treated very respectfully.
This seems a little bizarre because I don't know. You'd think if, and maybe I don't know anything about the college. It would seem like minority students would learn of the terrible policies of this college and elect to go somewhere else.
You would think so.
I'm reading the story, and perhaps this just means how out of touch I am. But one of the complaints is that Black, trans, disabled students are actively being sought out and confronted by campus police on a constant basis. Now, that seems like a very, very discrete subset of the population.
Yep, especially the disabled students.
Yeah, Black,
the cops
trans, disabled students.
Right.
Like,
they're messing with James.
How many? I mean, maybe there's a lot. I don't know. It just seems like it would be a very small number. And, a few incidents can just completely distort whatever kind of statistical basis they're relying on. But that's kind of bizarre. And they're calling all the teachers racist. I'm very skeptical about that.
Yeah, and especially they're calling him racist. And he had, his past, if you look at all of his history, it's actually fighting for racial equality. When he was back in a different position, he had left a position because he felt that the institution was expressing racism. So, again, it's all making this massive issue and not wanting to hear any sort of response from the other side. And there's teachers that are calling for his ouster, too. And, of course, the school's not in any way supporting him. Other teachers that he's friends with are too cowardly to stand up and say, this is crazy, this has to stop. But I mean, and again, none of these students are getting kicked out, despite the fact that they've literally, they're coming up and, physically intimidating him. They're not letting him come on campus. They canceled a few days of school because they said, well, it's not safe for you.
Just the method is just so out of line, it seems to me. If you're all so upset with the policies of the school, well, certainly protesting is a valid thing, but just becoming violent, you could also just leave the school, and that would hit them in the pocketbook.
Right.
That would send a very strong message. And if there was a report of hundreds or thousands of students leaving because of the policies of this particular college, guess what? That college is not going to do well recruiting incoming students. They're going to be bending over backwards to, ease the concerns of, whatever policies that are affecting or discriminating against, because the social media backlash would be huge. But that's just not the tack they took.
Right. But also, I can't stand the fact that they're, again, getting violent, but the lack of dialogue. The lack of willingness to actually consider any other point of view and this mob mentality is sickening. And you look at this guy, the college hasn't fired him yet, but if they do, is he going to be able to get a job anywhere? Probably not. And all because of this. And again, I don't see how you can legitimately, from a neutral perspective, read the actual email he sent. And I'll link to the story in the show notes, which again, you can find at lionsofliberty.com/ELL24. But I'll link to this initial email, but you cannot legitimately read it and say that he said anything offensive, that he did was anything but utterly respectful. And the argument he made makes complete and total sense.
I would love to know what they think is racist.
Yeah, right. If this is what sets you off, my God.
Touchy-feely. It's a real world. It's going to be tough.
Speaking of touchy-feely, that's a great segue. So tell you what I want to do. I want to take a quick commercial break, and when we come back, I'm going to wrap up with something that really, I think, is really, really funny and tragic at the same time. So I want to talk about it.
I firmly believe one of the most important things you can do to protect yourself and your loved ones is to own a firearm. But for a lot of people, buying a gun can be an overwhelming process. There are just so many options, and not everyone feels comfortable walking into a gun store. Well, our friends at martinarmory.com are doing their part to change that. Martin Armory was founded with a simple goal: to make buying a gun simple and affordable. Instead of carrying thousands of different guns, martinarmory.com only carries 25. This allows them to focus on providing the most popular guns on the market at insanely cheap prices. And now, for a limited time, their prices are even more insane, as martinarmory.com is offering Lions of Liberty listeners free shipping. Simply go to martinarmory.com, pick an awesome gun, and enter the promo code LIONS. Again, that's martinarmory.com. The promo code is LIONS.
All right, and we are back, everybody. I gotta say, I'm excited about the new sponsor, Martin Armory. I am personally, the gun I'm looking at is the 357, a little 3.5-inch 357. Rico, do you have a specific gun that you prefer?
No, the PPK on 007.
Oh, I love that. I used to be able to shoot people right in the head, knock them dead.
I never beat you.
No, I'm
still a sore
amazing.
spot.
All right, so welcome back, guys. Please do check out our sponsor there. We're excited to have them on. So here's what I want to talk about here. And it really cracked me up. But I have I do stand-up comedy, and I have a comedian friend named Dana Moon. You can look her up, follow her on Twitter. She's liberal. I don't want you to give her any shit, but she's really a very funny girl. So she had a tweet, and basically here's what she said. A man who makes a living giving inspirational speeches on respecting and loving females like the, quote, divine goddesses, end quote, they are, out of nowhere just sent me a Snapchat of him jerking off. ... I cannot. Okay, so in regards to that, I saw that, I had to laugh because, ha ha ha, male feminists. And the reason I had to laugh is because I think this is far more common than people think. So Rico, what's your take on it? Are guys who are overtly super feminists, do they really believe in the cause, or are they simply using it as a way to slide their way into some vaginas?
Based upon my statistical analysis of this one person, I'm going to say, yeah, the latter. I don't really know personally any super hardcore, inspirational speaking feminists, so it'd be hard for me to generalize. Maybe some actually believe it. Maybe others just like to send jerk off Snapchats.
Maybe.
I don't know.
I don't know, because it harkens back to, I think I was listening to Jordan Peterson on Joe Rogan, but he was talking about this and how he feels, and again, Peterson's kind of I think he's also a biologist, but he was talking about this and saying it's a very common thing that actually happens, because when you do think about it, you've got these men, and I'm not going to, I don't want to go to the way to bash feminist men, because I'm sure a lot of them believe in the cause. But at the same time, there's a lot of these guys who maybe they're not the alpha males, maybe they're more betas or, I don't know, Cetas. I don't know what you say with the C, but deltas.
C is at Charlie.
Charlies?
Yeah.
They're Charlie males. There you go. So anyway, you got these beta Charlie deltas. And he's saying that this is a way for them to compete. Our evolutionary mindset kicks in where you want to get laid, you want to get up in there, and so you say, okay, what's the best way for me to do this? Well, I can get on their side, I can worm my way in and become a friend and an ally for this cause, and make them think that I'm sensitive and all for them, and then I can worm my way in there, and when they're least expecting it, boom, I pounce and I'm out of the friend zone and I'm into the sweet sauce that is the female body.
It's definitely one strategy. It's like the evolutionary kind of the guy in Animal House who's strumming the guitar,
right,
and singing these very
I gave my love
dainty songs, and he's got like a bunch of chicks around him, and that was the feminists 50 years ago, and now it's inspirational speakers, and they're sending Snapchats.
Well, wait, look at the animal kingdom, right? It reminds me of, I was watching I think it was Mother Nature, Planet Earth, and there's the big elephant seal who's got all the ladies, all the hot seal chicks are after him because he's the number one. But then you got these little sneaky seals, and as soon as that guy's out of the way, they I got to get in there. They sneak in when he's not looking, and they try to find any way to have sex. I honestly do think that it happens a lot more than we'd like to think, and that a lot more than women would like to think. Because look, at the end of the day, guys are still guys. Even though you put on a feminist mantle, I think your base instinct to be like, I really would like to have sex with a lot of these women. I'm all for women's rights, but I also am all for having a lot of sex.
Yeah, well, he's just throwing it out there, and he's saying, if you don't like it, send it right back.
Right.
So, that's what you did.
Well, I think she was hoping, I think this guy was hoping that Dana would send something right back, but unfortunately what he got was a lot of scorn instead. So
I want to know who it is.
I do too. I don't know why she didn't out him. If I was sending something like that or sent something like that, and it was somebody that was a public figure, I would definitely be like, hey, Johnny Divine Goddess over there just sent me his schlong, and I'd like everybody to see it.
It's up on. I uploaded it to YouPorn, so
right
here with his home address.
Right. So anyway, all right. I think that's it. Anything you want to bring up, Rico? Anything special you want to share with the audience?
No.
Okie dokie. Artichokes. All right, cool. Well, guys, thank you for joining us on this edition of Electric Liberty Land. I want to once again remind you, follow us on Twitter at Lions of Liberty. Listen to Mark Claire on Mondays with his in-depth interviews with visionaries of the movement, and very special show coming up on this next Monday, guys. It's going to be the 300th episode. You do not want to miss it. Mark's got some amazing guests that are going to be in studio with him. So check that out. John Odie Odermatt on Felony Fridays is fantastic. And like I said, please do support the show. Give us a review on iTunes. That really helps. Check out the t-shirts, lionsofliberty.store. We have some awesome shirts from Dan Smots, our good friend and designer. And, of course, you can support the podcast through our Podbean Patrons program. Everything does help. We're trying to grow this show, and your Liberty dollars will be put to work. Basically doing more of this.
Sending us to Vegas again.
Yeah. God, I wish. All right, guys. So thank you so much for me, Brian McWilliams, from our legal advisor, Rico, from the Lions of Liberty. Always stay plugged in to Liberty.